Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here for Leadership Conversations. This is the show where we talk about leadership according to the world that matters to you. And on this podcast, we spend quite a bit of time talking about leadership, of course. But this year we've been focusing and refocusing the podcast on fundraising, nonprofit stuff, the things that matter to nonprofits. And I have throughout the year brought on several guests. I have targeted this topic. And my guest today is no different. Today we have Mr. Mark Buzan, who is hailing from Quebec up in Canada. I can't pronounce the city. Mark, so how do you pronounce the city?
Gatineau.
Okay, I clearly would not have gotten that right. So he's from Gatineau, Quebec. And Mark is a guru on nonprofit sponsorships, which is the reason why I reached out to him, because it speaks to what I talk about, and that's nonprofit sustainability. So we'll get into that. And then Mark is a self-professed growth hacker. So we'll talk about that as well. But Mark, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing quite well. Glad that we could make through. We had a little earlier technical challenges, but we're here. So
we are here.
Yeah.
So let me go back to your bio. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you want folks to know about you?
Yeah, sure. I was not somebody that naturally came to the nonprofit world, nor frankly, if you'd asked me, my younger self some 25 years ago, if I'd be, raising money and working for nonprofits, I would have probably looked at you with a really, come again, look. But life is what it is. It kind of takes you in different directions. I got my start on Parliament Hill working for a member of Parliament. I was inevitably, you get exposed to a lot of political fundraising, advocacy work naturally on this. Often, sometimes you're on the receiving end of it, as well as delivering it out. I did that about 5 years, and I'd say the only people would hire us for hacks, as I realized after 5 years on Parliament Hill doing political stuff, tend to be the nonprofit and association world. So I found myself very much on the communication side. I was doing advocacy campaigns, membership outreach, event coordination. Never still really realized that all of this in the end is all about being very entrepreneurial and growing, doing business development for the non-for-profit sector. I think I was probably just doing it, not really realizing that I was in fact, being a business development guy. I had the opportunities later on as I gradually, worked my way up in my career in roles that were more senior and doing things like being chief of communications, executive director, president, CEO of 2 national associations, where inevitably I began to realize that, you want to get anything done, you're going to have to learn how to collaborate and work with other groups to get building partnerships, to build a bigger piece of have a bigger piece of the pie, or to grow the pie more importantly, or at the very least, you're going to need to figure out a way to, dare I say, grow the revenues. I would say there was a lot of great stuff that we were doing, but we were always very frustrating, because we were always frustrated by the fact that there was more in our desire to be able to, in our mission that we wanted to be accomplished, but we were lacking in the means to be able to do that. And I think probably a lot of nonprofit people who are listening to that can relate to that challenge. But it was through these exposures, particularly the senior level, where it was falling upon me. It wasn't something you naturally signed on, but you realized you wanted to get anything done, you had to do this. I began to be exposed to the fact of a few things. One, a real big epiphany was being able to audit on a book from a gentleman author I enormously respect out of California, Ed Rigsby, who's got a book out called The ROI of Membership, where he took I think at the time was really revolutionary thought. Stop guilting people. Guilt, the ROI on guilt in the not-for-profit sector doesn't work. In fact, the only thing it really ever accomplishes is it just ends up frustrating yourself and pardon my language, pissing off the other person, frankly. So you're better off to find and tap and adapt your offering towards that. And I later took that on to another very senior role, was doing business development sponsorships for the association consulting engineering companies, wherein I took them from 3 partners that they were just kind of sponsoring off and on, doing this to 36 in 2.5 years, and we're over $500,000. Very much on that whole perspective of stop trying to guilt people into supporting the organization and listen. from a business provider. What makes sense for them? And we were very successful. Was very successful in getting in big brands, major banks involved, interested in this, software companies, Autodesk, Microsoft, all these kind of companies that began to see us as a value-added partner, and at the same time also helping their, some of their CSR objectives at the same time.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of what we talk about on this podcast and what we talk about in our books and resources. And I think, I really want to hover around this idea you talked about, which is, do we grow the pie versus grow the revenue? And I'm going to make an assumption about what it's like in Canada, but here in America, the pie has not grown and it will not grow.
Yeah.
And the reason why it won't grow, no matter how much more money we throw at this from a foundation perspective, everybody every day gets an epiphany that they want to start a nonprofit. And as they start this nonprofit and they begin to get into the marketplace and begin competing, that crowds out the pie and it crowds out the availability of resources, because now you have to divide up what already exists and what potentially may exist if you forecast out with the potential new growth of a new nonprofit. And so the pie isn't growing. And I think to the point you're talking about and what we're going to talk about today, we have to look at growing the revenue. And we also have to get out of the business, as you talked about, relying upon the ROI of guilt, which is something we are guilty of in a nonprofit space.
It sucks. The ROI sucks.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Only in if you're a strictly entrepreneurial kind of perspective, forget the fact that we're all about this because we've got our hearts in this and we want to do something there. I get that totally. I wouldn't. There's probably 100 other things that'd be much more profitable and that I personally get it, but I do this because I care on this. But if I were to try to subtract, and this is really hard, we sometimes have to try to subtract ourselves, like do that out of body removal of this and subtract that and try to put yourself in the perspective of the other person. Think about it. What's the most important topic to most people?
Money.
Themselves.
Oh, with that too.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
That sounds like shocking. Oh, what a horrible. No, that's just human nature. People are inevitably going to be looking at something. Okay, well, where do I fit into this? If it doesn't have to necessarily be monetarily gained, maybe it's some recognition, some opportunity for prestige, something that's going to offer and give them some self. Maybe it's just a sense of some self-fulfillment in one form or another. You know what I mean? We have to start looking at things like this, and that's where this ROI kind of thing often come about. In that, going about, there's just a lot of topics that you brought up I want to address, but just to take it from there. And specifically when it came to membership is one kind of format that works for nonprofits. I recognize it's not for everybody, depending on that, but assuming it is, you pointed out there is no shortage of places where you're going to get solicited for join this cause, support this cause, whatever that may be. And there are, and then we have the internet often to contend with that. You can get a lot of great information from anyways. You don't need to join it or forego, $100, $200, whatever that may be. You've got to really got down like a business in some ways. Sharpen that old pencil and say, okay, what does this make sense for? So taking that example of the membership of ROI, and I don't want to steal credit from this. So this is largely Ed's things, but I use it it's brilliant. He says, try to break it down from the perspective of a customer, if you will, and ask them, what do you value, or what out of these, first of all, what do you value out of these services that we're offering? How much would it cost if you were to try to do that yourself? Or or how much would you pay if you were to try to do that yourself in some form or another, or not this, and then break down a number. Now, in one organization, I was president and CEO of the Canadian Association of Recycling Industries. We found two things that were happening. The first is that our association was offering, no word of a lie, 19 different services. 19 different services to prospective members, industry, and causes and organizations, NGOs that were a member of us. And I don't want to sound disparaging to my predecessor. He did a lot of great things, but he thought that was, wow, that sounds great. But when we actually went out and surveyed the membership, surveyed the market of plus people who could potentially support us, we found out that people really only knew about 3 of the 19 services. 3 out of 19. That meant our whole staff, and we're dedicating our effort towards 16 other services that people didn't even know about. They didn't even have any value on there. So dialing it back and then also asking for them meant that we were able to not only harmonize and get really more focused on the value proposition and being more potentially focused on the mission that we were so important. That's so important about nonprofit service is really about, it's about delivering impact and change, right? We were also going to focus on this, but then also get smart business-wise and say, okay, why are we offering all these 16 things that nobody cares about, nobody values as well? And further, then the secondary exercise of this is that we have to, and I think this is so different. You're right in the sense. I'll say that yes, the number of players is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, particularly in an internet age. I'm not sure if I completely say that means the pie is getting smaller. It just means that there's more people getting into the same pie, and we've got to think about ways as well that you carve out your niche within that pie as well. But we were able to say to, Clark Enterprises, for example, did you know that your membership, for every $1 that you spend in Carry membership, you get $9.26 back in services? And here's how. You see how that kind of changed the dynamic in the conversation? It was no longer a conversation of where many people would say, or I had a board member who literally, no word of a lie, was slamming the desk, and he said, God darn it, they should be supporting us because it's the right thing to do. And I said, George, I wish I had 500 more people like you, but that's not how it works often enough. The conversation, when it's focused on the you and the value proposition, just changed the dynamic, and we were able to quickly keep and recruit 3 new members shortly after, within 3 members, of rather large, substantial corporate members. Well, taking that approach later on in sponsorships, the same thing was approached. It was taken on in that, what are you looking value? What are your challenge in marketing? What are you coming across? And then, as I like to say, good old salespeople would say, is just shut up and listen. And you'd be amazed at what they tell you. And we were able to, as a result, shift around and make our offerings as close as we could. Sometimes we couldn't match it, but as close as we could to what was actually valued by potential sponsors, and rely much more on sponsorships rather than those grants funding sources, which I think you touched. I don't want to get on your other point there. And why personally, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of the grants, of grant sources, is because of a lot of those reasons that you mentioned there. But just rather than swim in the red, bloody, shark infested oceans, go into a blue ocean where it was a new territory.
Yep. So you mentioned one of the books that I recommend. That's The Blue Ocean Effect. So if you have not read that, to the audience out there, you certainly must read it to understand what Mark is talking about, red versus blue. I'm going to jump on a number of things here. You were talking about, you're talking about memberships, and I'm assuming you're going to interchangeably use that term with sponsorships. You were talking about identifying services you want to sell, putting the value on that for ROI, and focusing on what we're good at and what we're known for, which is a tough intersection for nonprofits to rarely admit that we are known for this and good at that, which means we have to get rid of other programs. That is very, very hard for nonprofits to do. But I really want to begin to talk strategy in a minute, and then come back to some generic questions. The strategy I want to talk about is, where does memberships fit into the overall scheme of fundraising, and how to make it work? And for me, I'm wondering, does it have this look where a person or a company is invited to invest into a nonprofit at a certain rate or dollar amount? and in exchange for their investment, they may receive one or all of the following opportunities to volunteer or serve, opportunities to learn and get educated or to educate others, to solve a business problem, or to establish a partnership that has both a problem-solving effect and a way to give back. Is that how you're looking at the use of memberships, or is there more to it than that?
It depends. Yes, it depends. I mean, I probably know one way of saying that. It depends largely on your cause. And I'll be right up front. Your board really has to have a very strategic conversation if it wants to go down that route. Because if you are going to take the route of memberships, and probably very much the same case with sponsorships, you can't think of that as just as free money. You're going to have to work for that and service that as well. On the flip side of it, though, I do think that it provides a much more readily engaged tribe of people who are passionate about you. So memberships can mean a variety of different things. They can just like you mean, they have voting. Perhaps they have voting rights. They may have voting rights. They'll have certain access to some services that might be unique to your cause. Maybe they're equipped as well to become advocates for your cause. But the bottom line is that certainly there's going to be some degree of expectation along the line that some service is going to have to be rendered in exchange for for their membership, for absolutely certain. So I'm a big fan of them. I like them for a variety of things, but like anything that you're going to be taking, in terms of your funding strategy, you do need to consider that.
So give us some examples of nonprofits, whether you've advised them, consulted them, or implemented yourself, of where nonprofits successfully implemented membership strategies or sponsorship strategies, and just give us the details around that.
Yeah, I think I've seen it probably the most successfully and the most common tends to be on the association side of the nonprofit family. I think you know as well as I do, William, that we say nonprofit, but there's a big umbrella under that of various different categories of nonprofits. I've seen it most commonly and most successfully used in professional and trade associations, or even a chamber of commerce or something of that nature, where it's very clear. It's a nonprofit organization that's got an advocacy base, might have some educational services, whatever that may be, but clearly you adhere to that association or that organization as a member, and you receive something back. I've seen some other examples, however, wherein somebody is just recently, I'm involved with a campaign right now, an outreach campaign, a funding campaign, where their key contributing factor is selling memberships at differing levels, and with what people get involved with that, or what they get in return for that, I should say, is they'll get access to the publication, for example. They're clearly hit up in opportunities as well to partake in some of the grander advocacy opportunities that might be, or special VIP invitations. Those I've seen that as well, depending, of course, you may want to consider sometimes even different levels of membership as well, depending on what that may be. Really, it kind of depends on your case and what would make sense, but the underlining factor is a willingness and accept in some kind of a service in exchange for.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I just wrote that question down, how to set pricing, and then give us some options of attractive pricing levels that you've seen in the marketplace.
Again, that largely depends. I mean, I've seen some trade and professional associations where if it's their membership base and they're going after corporations or like this, for example, that are done there, then clearly you can charge a premium on that. I've seen some other organizations, there's an advocacy group that's like a public advocacy group that I'm working with. They've got a very basic individual level where it's just $10, simply just $10 a month, and then they've had a very high corporate VIP level where you're invited to some very, very posh events, galas, whatever that may be, and that entry price is $1,000. I've seen some tiered level, for example, and this is more and more common. We're seeing nowadays with the prevalence of internet and how nonprofits, associations alike, leverage membership sites online and they'll have tiered membership. I've seen it. One of my clients right now, for example, the Project Management Association of Canada, they have a tiered membership wherein it's $60. It's $60 annually for this, and you get 6 months, your first 6 months free to be able to try that out. If you want to renew or you want to get at a senior level, then it can be up to about $100. And I've just seen the whole gamut, really. The bottom line is particularly putting an appropriate valuation on what you're offering. So that goes to one of the things that any sponsorship campaign, membership campaign that I would go out before we go out to market, we have to just like a business is going to try to size up the market and say, okay, well, what's out there currently? What are quote unquote competitors? And yes, nonprofits, you do have competitors. Yeah, you do have customers. You do have a market, just like a business. I know some of them that they say, they plug their ears. They don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. You do have that. What's currently out there, and what differentiating factor is out there, and what would cause somebody to want to pay? So maybe I could give an example for at least on the sponsorship side, and it has a lot of relevance on the membership side as well. With the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies, when that my first day on the job, when my boss comes there and he's a little cocky and he says, we're going to put a big red thermometer outside your office and we're going to check this out every day. And I'm going to go, and he's looking really clearly for me to, when are you going to go out in the field and start doing this? It's really, when are you going to start to do this? When are you going to? I said, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. We need to first and foremost get a sense of what are people what are companies, what are our prospective sponsors, prospective affiliate, associate members interested in? What do they see value in? We had developed, and when I got there, they had the benefit of hiring a prior consultant to set the basic groundwork out. And not a criticism on him, on his work. He laid out just a basic generic possible list of what could be possible. A lot of the stuff was very brand related. We'll slap your logo up here. We'll put your name out on the newsletter. And maybe based on his experience, his very, a very learned individual, this is what he's sort of seeing gradually. So this was a good framework to start from, but it had not been market tested yet. So I took that information out to past sponsors, some prospective sponsors, without the objective of trying to sell anything, and just ask them, how do you develop business? And I don't know, how would you go about doing that, with association involvement? And I'd be amazed at what kind of information I would get back from them. And what I was finding out very much from these conversations is that what was on our list of prospective ideas, value propositions, offerings out to these prospective members and prospective members in that was not really all that value. They really wanted, for example, something that we had underpriced, which was speaking opportunities. We thought, we only got a crowd, we only got a conference of maybe 100 people there. All right, we'll charge it out at, you want to come speak in front of the group, we'll charge it out, I think it was like $3,000. And we'll give you a sponsorship and recognition when you get up in front of the crowd and speak that. We were putting high value on, putting a newsletter up or there. They couldn't give a darn about that stuff. They couldn't give a darn about that. But that high-end stuff, we were undercharging. So I guess getting back to, giving a long answer to a short question is that you do a little bit of a trial and error and back and forth about what the market can bear. We were finding over a period of time that we had to devalue the stuff that the logo presence, this kind of stuff, and rather just kind of bundle it onto something else, but pump up the value proposition on the opportunity to speak before our conference. And by the time I was finished with them, we were no longer charging them $3,000. We were charging them $5,000 just to come up and speak. And we were able to do that because we were also very clear on the questions like this, which was, what's your biggest pain point and who do you need to speak? Well, they would respond back, we just find it really difficult to get in front of really senior decision makers. Well, hallelujah, our crowd was only 100 people in our little conference, but it was loaded with 100 CEOs. I mean, for somebody who's doing business development, the hallelujah that comes down and say, put me in front of that crowd. I don't care how small. I can actually have some conversations. Oh, and Mark, you mean you're going to grab me by the elbow and introduce me to all these CEOs? Yeah, I'm going to do that. Where do I sign up?
Yeah, my head's down, taking a ton of notes, and I began to think about scenarios where this can work out for nonprofits who are watching. Where do I start? I think let me just start by talking about and re-echoing what you talked about, which is surveying the market, right? Understanding what the market is saying, what the market wants, how the market is communicating their needs. And I think that for nonprofits, we have to transition to becoming more inquisitive and curious about what the market is saying. One of my favorite companies is Apple. I'm an Apple guy. And this year, Apple has released a number of products or released the next phase of existing products that most people have. And one of the things I'm struck by as I watch the reviews of their products, and I'm just a geek that way where I'm gonna get the product anyway, but I love watching the reviews. I love, learning tips and tricks and tidbits. But there's a consistent theme that's being put out there about these products that came out this year. And that theme was, Apple finally listened. It's more than just, Steve Jobs' original vision of we create something that people didn't know that they want. Yeah, there's a purpose for that. And, you introduce new products to the marketplace. But when it becomes a mature product and it's, plateauing, at some point, you got to tweak it to respond to the customer, which then allows you to charge a premium and people will be willing to fork it over. But the reviewers are saying Apple finally listened. And maybe that's the message, Mark, one of several messages we're going to leave today with our audience. That is, as nonprofit community, whether it's grant related, fundraising, traditional fundraisers, memberships, or other strategies, you got to finally listen to the marketplace. Yeah. And I think if you're going to earn revenue, which is what I talk about in my book, Sustainable, How to Sustain a Nonprofit and Faith-Based Organization, you can't do none of that. You can't launch it without having a competency, first of all, that is marketable and sellable. And then secondly, listen to the marketplace. And so I do want to talk about an example, Mark, this is fictional, that we can help a nonprofit out there who says, I like the idea, but I don't know how to make this happen. So I wrote down a concept, and maybe you can just add to this, right? Let's say there's a nonprofit that provides a service to the community that give me an example. Give me an example of a service.
I'm amazed by this. This is something, and I've broadcasted on this, and I've preached in the L types about. I love you, nonprofit folks, but man, you got some attitude changes that you got to do. It's like I can never work for me, or this will never work because I did. Not poppycock, nonsense. Poppycock. It can work. It can work. Okay, let's say. Okay. Let's imagine it's a service. Immediate first thing that comes to mind, you got like a Meals on Wheels kind of thing. You're helping the local homeless population of some sort or another. What things do you currently buy? Who do you buy from? And who would you like to know? And I'm asking this from a nonprofit perspective there. Who would a particular sponsor, for example, who would they like to know that they do that they supply food or whatever that may be, and it gets into the community? Who would they like to have that known?
All right, so Mark, I'm loving this. So let's go with this example. Yeah. This is off the fly, folks, unrehearsed.
Yeah, I'm yeah.
All right. I love this.
Prepared, man.
So let's say you are Meals on Wheels, right? And you said to Mark and throw me in there, I want to do a membership.
Yeah.
One of the things, Mark, you said that I think is powerful, obviously Meals on Wheels. I'm not totally familiar with what they do, but let's assume that what they do is they deliver meals to customers in need. Is that about
Yeah,
accurate?
pretty much different kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So they deliver meals to customers in need. All right. And that is, let's say that's their core mission. All right. And one of the things you said about their business operation is where's their buying power, right? Much of their buying power can be found in the food that they purchase.
Correct.
I am also going to throw in there much of their buying power can be found in the vehicles that they purchase because they have to have some
Yeah.
sort of delivery mechanism.
In the gas, in the
All right.
service, and
That's right.
yeah,
Everything associated with that, insurance, gas, etc. I will also, and I'm not sure how this works, but let's roll with this example. Their buying power is in their food packaging approaches. Let's say
yeah,
they purchase the food and they package food, whether it's in plastic or in boxes or bags or whatever the case may be. Let's just go with those three examples.
yeah,
If Meals on Wheels came to Mark and I and said, hey, can you help us with the membership package? In my mind, Mark, I'm thinking there needs to be a membership package that addresses a couple of things in a marketplace. Number one, which big companies want a permanent community presence?
yeah,
All right. And so I hope you guys are writing this down as an example, right? Which big companies want a permanent community presence, and what is the value of having that permanent adoption? And another way of membership is you can say, will you adopt us? Will you sponsor us, right? What is the value of that? The value comes in, obviously, the dollars that's associated with that. Then the other value comes in, we have a place for our employees to volunteer.
yeah,
And the other value comes in that this particular company or set of companies or industry, industry that decides to adopt you, which is another way to go to membership, is we get the market that we're doing this and we get marketing dollars. And so this becomes very
bingo,
interesting,
bingo.
right? Because now people are wondering, well, how you make the money? If I am a part of the car dealership industry, and the local industry association, car dealership association says, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sponsor Meals on Wheels. One, it's a win for everybody because you can get cars donated to the nonprofit. But if we're marketing this thing all year long, that this is what we're about, this is how we're giving back, and the vehicles that we sell, vehicle X, are so reliable that you can get, I don't know, 500 miles to the gallon to deliver X thousands of meals in 3 days. First of all, that is a marketing
Yeah,
gold mine. The nonprofit can now say, in exchange for utilizing our infrastructure to deliver to where we deliver food, we utilize vehicles. We don't have to use your vehicles, right? And we also manufacture. It is going to cost you X.
yeah.
Now, where are you at with this example? What would you add to it? What would you
Well,
take
I mean,
away?
we're going to be getting it. You and I would have to probably have a sit down and do some real serious, as I say, sharpening of the pencils. But
Mm-hmm.
The people and the mentors that I've worked with have that they've got it down to a science where they literally broken it down by per impression on the percents and all like this. And anybody who wanted to talk to me, we could talk and do a calculation of this. You have to get a good sense of, okay, who's going to see the truck, for example? And it's just not the people in need, because obviously the truck's it has to get from point A to point B, right? It has to get there. And in the course of the time, like you rightly said, over the course of the time of the year, I mean, it's going to see a number of how many eyeballs, take into, now I'm going to take a wild stab. You're probably not all that far different from where I live. How many times do you see car dealerships using buying billboard space?
See, you're talking about something I wasn't even talking about. I mean, that's a whole nother
we're brainstorming out here, folks. We're just coming out there. But I mean, what do you think that average, for example, that average billboard sales agency, how do you think that they break down what they're worth? Well, they know exactly if they put something up along the highway, along the interstate or wherever like this, they know how many people are going to zoom past that thing and how many eyeballs are going to see that. and they literally have it broken down. Well, that's the same thing that you have to break down and you put a real genuine valuation. And that is also the problem why I think so many nonprofits have trouble with the sponsorship space, and why they rely on what I call the GSB syndrome, the gold, silver, bronze thing. I'm going to let you in on something, William. They don't give a darn about what they're called. They really don't care. What they care about is, okay, how much exposure and how's our company or how am I going to look as a result of being associated with this. But the conversation as a result, I guess you can kind of begin to see that this isn't just a cap in hand, see, please do the right thing, AKA guilt people into supporting this. This is now a business conversation. This changes the dynamic there, and then you can flavor it as well with the cause. Now, I'm probably jumping all over the place, and then there's a whole aspect of how you make the appropriate presentation and pitch and all like that when you're in the meeting. You have to start, of course, with what the great mission that of what you're trying to do and what you're accomplishing, because you win people over the heart. But you can't forget the logical start like this, because that's what people are going to, in the end, justify their investment with, and make themselves feel good about the thing, saying, yes, this was not only was I doing a good thing, this was a smart thing to do.
So Mark went in a totally different direction with the vehicle thing. I was talking about getting the industry, the car industry, automotive industry, to sponsor a number of vehicles plus a fee to use our name for their volunteer and community service activity. Then Mark came in with a sponsorship fee for eyeballs, because if I'm Meals on Wheels and I travel 1 million miles a year, that means I am going to pass X number of millions or thousands of eyeballs. That particular value means I'm a traveling billboard. So out of the vehicle piece, the buying power of vehicles or the usage of vehicles, Mark and I came up with 2 sponsorship, adoption, partnership strategies.
I call them assets.
All right, they're assets. Now here's the other thing, Mark, right? We have buying power with food. So let me give you this example. If I'm Meals on Wheels and I have buying power with food where I buy in bulk, I'm thinking of, I got here 2 membership concepts. Number 1, membership concept around the brand of food that I decide to use and give to my customers, right? Name recognition. So instead of giving a non-name brand cereal, we may give a branded cereal. What is that worth? What percentage is that worth, right? The second membership fee that I'm thought about is the food prep fee, right? So are we going to get food prepped and prepared by a celebrity chef who wants to be known in the community? Or are we going to get food prepared by a particular restaurant that is popular or is up and coming? Or are we going to get
cross promotion opportunities?
Cross promotion opportunities. And are we going to get food prepared by a restaurateur who has a chain of restaurants in the area? And some may be asking, well, why would that matter? If I'm trying to be seen as a good community citizen, a corporate citizen, 1, I'm going to want to give back any way I can. But 2, if the community found out that celebrity chef X or restaurateur X is also doing food preparing the food, that association mentally says, well, I've been to this restaurant and I paid a premium dollar and I thought the food was good. So if I already know that the food is good and it's tasty and it's healthy, then I can rest assured that chef so-and-so or restaurateur so-and-so is giving quality food. Therefore, Meals on Wheels is really stepping their game up, you know, in terms of the quality. So, I mean, where are you at with some examples with?
Oh, this is just, I'm just getting it. You can just, I'm jumping on. I'm so excited by this, frankly. This is amazing. You know, there's just so many, if you really start to get down to it and think about this, this is why I said poppycock earlier like this. It's like, just get out of the negativity and just get creative. You'll begin to see that what's really genuinely possible, right? You know what immediately popped in my head is another example. We can jump off to another side here. This is something why sponsorships, the field of sponsorships is just so vast. And the opportunities, when you begin to realize just how many opportunities are, you can begin to change that mentality of scarcity towards, wow, oh my God, the biggest problem is I don't know where to start. There's just so many things. One of the first times that I got really exposed to sponsorships was earlier in my career. I'm going to jump back probably about 12, 13 years. I was taking on the role of Chief of Communications for the Canadian Paralympic Committee. So this is the national sporting body for Paralympic sports in advance of the last Vancouver Winter Games. You might remember that when it happened. Now, prior to the Vancouver Games, this little organization was dinky, pincy wincy there. Literally, we were a staff of probably at best 8 or 9 people in the head office. That was small. We had really little money like this. And we needed to get ready for this game. The Paralympic Committee, the Olympic Committee in Canada was really saying, we've got to really leverage this opportunity. So how do we get the worth out there? Because we had another biggest part of the challenge at the time. It's different now, but back in the day, we had done a lot of surveying in that, and people automatically associated the word Paralympic sport with Special Olympics, which is different. It's very, very different. People didn't work. There was a very small awareness, like about 5% awareness drop. So we had obviously we wanted to bring money in, but our even biggest problem was we needed to raise up awareness. We wanted people to be really proud of and totally amazed with these athletes. Yes, they've got physical, had physical challenges, physical disabilities, but they were true athletes in some way in life. And we wanted people to view them that way, like to amaze us. So what we did was we began to do, and I collaborated with my colleague who was doing sponsorships at the time. This is really where she really brought me into something, opened my mind up, of a beautiful concept that comes about of value in kind sometimes, or sponsorship values in kind. Let me explain. There was only so much that we could do on our total annual budget of probably a little more than $1 million annually. I know some organizations say, I would love to have $1 million. But you think about that, 8 staff, a head office downtown, and the capital like this, it starts to get smaller. And we had this huge mission to go. So instead, we said, okay, we managed to do, and I helped her negotiate and get a lock-in with one of the major trade publishers, publishing magazines. This company didn't have the mainstream publications, but it had under its property some 100 or 100, 200 odd trade publications, grain producers, manufacturers, all these kinds of different things, and a lot of small journal, like regional publications that they were the publisher for in their HQ in Toronto. We managed to negotiate an approach to him, and he began to really love what we were doing and what we were accomplishing. But he says, you know what, I can't fork out a big check for you, but here's what I'm willing to do. We negotiated a $250,000 value in kind of his assets, of his spaces of advertising in all of his publications across Canada, wherein we had now guaranteed ad space negotiated that we could then go out and sell into the marketplace. You begin to see the value that what was happening. And as a result of this, 2 things was happening. We created an asset. That's another important thing that's so important. And we were kind of talking about earlier about this, why it's so important for nonprofits to get serious about what their assets are, what they are of value. We created a really highly valuable asset where we could go to, I don't know, I'm going to make it up. I think we had the Royal Bank of Canada, which is in Canada is the largest bank. It's like the equivalent of Bank of America. Royal Bank, RBC, and say to them, you know what, you've got a huge advertising budget, but why don't you just go to us and you'll latch on to an amazing brand that's doing some fantastic things in advance of some international games. It's going to be right here in Vancouver. You'll get that. And also, rather than you going out and trying to negotiate 200 to 200 different ad deals, maybe through your agency, you just get one flat rate and you'll get your advertisements in all of these places. and it'll be associated with Paralympic sport. Do you not think that that would become a really attractive offering for a Royal Bank of Canada or something like that? Wow, I get to save money. I get attached to a really great cause that everybody's starting to get really excited about, and I can cut out the middleman. Wow, this is a great. Where do I sign? This is a great deal. You multiply that by so many other different times. What was also happening was organizations. Another one of the big like petroleum or gas station companies in Canada is called Petro-Canada. They've got gas stations everywhere in Canada, right? We worked out a deal with them and said they started where we latched onto their marketing campaign, saying, "Come to fill up your gas at Petro-Canada, proud sponsors of Paralympic sport." Where at the end they'd get a Paralympian that'd come up there and filling up gas or like this, or doing these other really neat things, and they were really motivational. We were pumped up like this because, like you wouldn't believe, because my God, we're finally getting the awareness. People are knowing about us here, and as a result of that, hell, we were getting paid, and we're also growing our awareness out.
I on the screen, everybody's looking at the book cover, Sustainable. I wrote How to Sustain a Faith-Based Nonprofit and Faith-Based Nonprofit Organization. You're mentioning terms that I wrote about and I believe in, Mark. And one term that I think must be reiterated is the word assets, the ownership or control of assets. And immediately, Mark, I thought about the fact that, so I'm hearing someone say, well, I can't afford to buy it. We don't have the money to buy it. What you articulated, the example you gave was, it's not about buying it. If you can get an in-kind asset donation, you're now in control of the asset, which means now you can sublease your control of that asset. You talked about subleasing the ad space, subleasing petroleum usage, and how folks can now get that, and you're getting a piece of those funds. In this book, I talk about this, and I'm sure, Mark, you have resources that you'll share as we begin to wrap up. But this is critical, man. This is important for organizations to think about in terms of what it means to take on memberships, what it means to become sustainable. I had a question here for you. I do want to wrap up because I can talk to you all day long. I'm gonna ask this one question. I think the others you kind of addressed, but this is something that really is concerning to me. It's an interest of mine. And the question is this, Mark, what can you say, what can we say as we wrap up to emerging nonprofit leaders who are emerging into leadership roles and responsibilities, who are on the incline of their career and are taking over for guys like you and I? What can we say to them to get them to think broadly about fundraising strategies that are beyond the traditional strategies out there, that are beyond grants, that are beyond chicken dinner sales, that are beyond cupcake sales and cookie sales? What can you say to them today to get them inspired to think along these lines?
Well, I'm going to use a first thing, a little thing that my dear aunt in the area there I go to, and she's been in many ways kind of a professional source of mentorship from time to time. I remember one time where I was stressed out and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to do this project. She says, Mark, breathe and believe. Breathe and believe. It's going to be okay. That's the first thing. Breathe, take a step back. I know this seems scary. Look, when they told me at that job that, we want you to raise, we've never really had at the Association Consulting Engineering Companies, we've only had really 3 partners. We've never really done sponsorship. Oh, and by the way, we need you to cover about a $300,000 deficit in our budget. And we'd like you to do that get, $300,000 in annual recurring revenue in the next 3 years. Good luck, buddy. That was a moment of gulp. But you know what? When you breathe and believe and just take this down, and first and foremost is break this down into mini steps, okay? The first thing is first and foremost is you've got to have good, solid assets. Not from the heart necessarily, although it's important, not from the message to the heart there. That's what attracts people on this. But what's going to close the deal is you need to have good, solid assets that are tested out there in the market. Okay?
I like that.
People will constantly say this, and you can probably attest to this. And you've been in business for a while. How many times, William, you say, you tell a friend or a family member, I'm going into business, and they'll say, oh, that's great. That's good for you. But then when the time comes for them to actually cut the check, it's a whole different, I know they kind of go silent. Okay. The ultimate litmus test of this, and I was just at a social entrepreneurship event, and I was telling them they were grumbling, and nobody was paying out this, or we're starting this out, or we want to go out and get this grant funding, and we're never getting supported. And I said, before you even start anywhere on this, you got to genuinely test to see, is this of any value, and how much would you actually pay for? Would you even pay for this, and how much would you actually pay for this? I'm not trying to sell you. I just genuinely want to know. We're trying to figure out whether this. I call it the Columbo approach. Anybody who's ever watched Columbo, he says, I would literally go into the meetings and, well, I got this hunch. I don't know if it's right or not. Maybe you can tell me if it's crazy or not. And people genuinely really love that kind of thing where you kind of go in there and say, can you validate this? Is there something to this? I amazingly would get great answers and feedback to be able to either sell directly, and maybe my hunch was right. A lot of the times people would say, yeah, your hunch is, you're not completely crazy, but we might want to go this way. Rather than me trying to do the hard sell and the hard pitch, it's just simple. It's go out and find what people want and then give it to them.
I cannot say anything more. I will share another one of my books here. You said, tell me what your aunt said again.
I didn't say anything. I just said, give it to them.
No, I think there was something that there was a kind of an idea that she used to say to you all the time.
Oh, breathe and believe.
Breathe and believe. Breathe and believe. So off of that, I'm going to add this. My first book that I wrote, Leverage. I am going to add to what Mark said, and I'm going to encourage emerging leaders in the nonprofit space to not only breathe and believe, because there's a lot there that we can talk about, but I'm also going to encourage you, as you breathe and believe, go ahead and leverage. Leverage everything you have around you. And if you rewind this podcast or this video and you look at what Mark and I talked about with the real live example of how to create new money out of thin air without writing one grant, you can breathe and believe on that. And if you just leverage what you already have, as we taught you in this particular podcast, you will be able to create new opportunities. In this book, I talk about the biblical character Jacob and how he became wealthy with absolutely no money, no resources, absolutely nothing to his name. And he became wealthy because he got fed up, and he decided to create his own asset donation membership that Mark talked about. And if you want to read more, go get the book, or you can read it in the Bible there. But Mark, I just think that there was so much that we talked about. Any parting words before we sign off here?
Yeah, folks, look, at any point in time, it is possible. I've said that this so much in this video. If anything, I want people to realize that it doesn't have to be scary.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be scary. If you break this down, it's possible. If I had gone in and said, oh my God, on the first day when my boss had put that supposed thermometer, put that thermometer outside of my office door and say, hey, you're going to hit that 300,000. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to hit that $300,000 today. I probably would have, would have had a nervous breakdown. But, instead I looked at this, methodically and said, okay, who do we want? What do we have to offer? What's of value? Who would possibly take a very small sampling of who would possibly be interested in. And I know that would be very receptive, just having a frank conversation. And I would stress with them, listen, I'm not trying to pitch you or sell like this. Frankly, if you wanted to do something, I'm not in a position to be offer it to you, which, by the way, is a bit of a free sales tactic, is an amazing thing to probably pull people more in to say, when you say that I'm not going to give it to you, people wanted something more. But and just always kind of be willing to fine tune and tweak. You know, that was the thing that I would say is immediately when someone would say, well, can you send me something? I said, no, I can't send you something, and I'm not going to send you something, because your idea of what would work in a marketing or a CSR campaign is going to be maybe different than what Microsoft's is. We need to have a frank conversation, and this is going to be a several conversation steps. So that'd be the other piece of lesson that it has is think about that.
And what's the CSR, Mark?
Corporate social responsibility initiatives there as well. So, these are different things. So, above all too is check me out or look me up if you want, 90dayturnabout.com there and as well.
Mark, this was awesome. We got to do it again. And
I hope so.
We probably should spend several hours together. And I like the idea of going through fictitious examples and just giving the people what they want and teaching them how to do this.
We should do a challenge to that effect. We should do a challenge, like call it like a call-in challenge.
Call in, give us a challenge, and we'll give you a membership strategy on the spot. Yeah. Actually, no, I'm serious. We should really do that. and we should charge for it, right? We should charge a ticketed online event to come talk to Mark and Dr. Clark, and we will do that. Mark, we will talk about that offline, but thank you for doing this. Thank you for being a part of this, and appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. It's believe and breathe and believe. It is possible.